St. Patrick's Day. Jim Bryden isn't here. Last week he said to me, I hope you're going to have some kind of hook to connect what you're going to say to St. Patrick's Day. So I have several. You know you're Irish American when you own at least 3 of those thick, itchy wool sweaters. You know you're Irish American when you know what AOH stands for?
No.
American Order of Hibernians, or whatever.
Hibernians.
Yeah, I know.
The building is on Main Street
Next to Anthony's
down
College.
there. Hibernians, the ancient order.
Oh.
If you're Irish, you probably went there with your family and learned to dance. And all
No,
that.
Friendly Sons of the Shillelagh.
Oh, the shillelagh, yeah. And then even you probably Irish American, even if you aren't super into the holiday, but everybody automatically thinks you are. So that's another sign. And the 4th sign is if you are super into the holiday, you don't call it St. Paddy's Day, you call it St. Paddy's Day. Paddy apostrophe S, Paddy's Day. From which they get paddy wagon. Because the Irish were continually being hauled to jail on Saturday night.
No, it's because the cops were all Irish.
The cops were all Irish.
That's true.
So, and furthermore, there is a connection between St. Patrick's Day and today's topic. The title is Turning the Other Cheek. Because, of course, St. Patrick's Day comes to us from Ireland, and Ireland has been the scene of decade upon decade of conflict between the Irish and the British. And interestingly enough, did you know that St. Patrick himself was not Irish? He was British. This goes back to like somewhere around the year 500 AD. And that's back when the Irish were kind of strong and militaristic, and they would send raiding parties across the Irish Channel over to the shores of Britain, and they would capture people and enslave them, and that's how they brought the guy that came to be known as St. Patrick to Ireland. And so he eventually escaped, but then he went back as an older man after he had converted to Christianity, and he brought the message of Christianity to the island of Ireland. Supposedly he drove out all the snakes from Ireland. But Ireland is surrounded by water that's too cold for any snakes to migrate to it, so it does not indigenously have any snakes on it. So it's a metaphor for him driving out the pagans, the pagan religion, the Celtic religion, the Druids. So the scripture I have in mind for today comes to us from Matthew chapter 5, verses 38 and 39. You have heard that it was said, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. But I say to you, do not resist the one who is evil. But if anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to them the other also. So, it's describing an all too common occurrence in our world today, what to do when there's a bully. How do we respond as Jesus would have us respond? The conventional wisdom, the reflexive action that we often take is either running, that's the flight, or fighting back. So it's fight or flight is the sort of instinctive reaction that we have. But the gospel and the message of Jesus, he's delivering something completely different. He's describing a third way that's neither fighting nor running away. And one of my favorite commentators on this verse from the Bible is Walter Wink. He was a Protestant theologian. He taught at Auburn Seminary down in New York City until I guess around 2005, somewhere in there. So he wrote this book called Jesus' Third Way. And in the book, he does away with the notion, which is understandable, that turning the other cheek has anything to do with passivity or being submissive. It has nothing to do with being submissive. In fact, he says, it's actually perhaps the most powerful political statement ever made. So how do we get from this idea of being meek and passive to it being the most powerful statement of political revolution ever made? Well, in order to demonstrate what he means, I need a volunteer. So who's willing to help me out here up on stage? Peggy. Okay. Great. So Peggy, will you stand right here, please? And so I'm the bully, and Peggy is the victim. And so typically when somebody would be struck, it would be because they're in some way a social or economic inferior to the bully. So a master would strike a slave. Parents would strike children. Husbands would strike wives, because that's the social order of hierarchy. This is going back in Jesus' time, in the ancient world. And I would not be allowed to use my left hand to strike the other person, because the left hand, sorry for all you left-handers, which includes me, the left hand was considered unclean. Ritualistically, it was unclean, but also because that's how they clean themselves after the toilet. I mean, in India today, you use your left hand to wipe yourself after using the toilet. And if you ever go to India, don't use your left hand to take something off the dinner table or even to shake hands. No, that's unclean. So I can't use my left hand, but I'm supposed to hit her on her right cheek. So will you raise your hand, your right hand? So that's the cheek I'm supposed to hit her with. So how would I do that? What kind of movement would I make in order to strike her on her right cheek? Without using my left hand, I have to use this hand.
It would have to be a backhand.
It would have to be a backhand, right? Like that. She's ready and waiting for me.
Not ancient times.
Karate.
You're not as helpless as you.
Karate. I
She
know
took
how to
karate.
block.
She knows how to block. Good. So, yeah. So in order to reach the right side of her face, I would have to use the back side of my hand, which also works for the social structure of the day, because only equals would use fists or the palm of a hand to hit. So by doing it this way, I'm signaling that I'm her social superior, and so I would do this. So now pretend I just hit you in the face, and you're going to turn that cheek like that. Now Jesus says to the downtrodden, if someone strikes you on the right cheek, then after they do, turn your other cheek. So now so what am I to do as an oppressor now? Because that's not her right cheek, that's her left cheek. And I can't reach her right cheek because her nose is in the way. And plus I already hit her right cheek, so it's like telling the same joke again twice. If it didn't work the first time, it's probably not going to work the second time. So by turning her cheek and showing me the left cheek, she's signaling to me, I am not your inferior. If you're going to hit me now, you're going to hit me as an equal, because that would be with a palm or even a fist. But so she has just withdrawn the option for me to continue the game of me being somehow superior to her. So that's why it's a radical move. And you can be sure that whoever tried this probably met with even more escalated violence, because that would have enraged the bully. who do you think you are? And they could then have order their slave beaten or whoever else they were talking to. So it may not have ended the violence, but at least it broke the pattern of intimidation, because she's showing me that she's no longer intimidated. She's asserting her equality, her dignity as a human being. Thank you. So that's why it was such a socially revolutionary act to take. It's a nonverbal way of communicating, I am your equal, and I'm not going to be treated as beneath you any longer. So you would also have to be willing to suffer the consequences, which could mean more violence and even worse violence. But that was the part of the whole strategy during the American Civil Rights Movement. They were willing to take the billy club. They were willing to go to jail, and they were willing to be set upon by dogs and fire hoses. But all of this was being witnessed and observed by a larger crowd. This was on TV, there were cameras. And every time the oppressor responded with more violence and the protesters responded peacefully, non-violently, the moral authority of the oppressor was eroded less and less and less, until finally the whole thing just toppled and the laws were changed, and people stood up for themselves for the first time. So you can see the same dynamic happening around the world whenever the practice and principle of nonviolent protest is this third way that Jesus is talking about. A more recent example from the 90s, remember back until like the mid-90s, there was still apartheid in South Africa. Mm-hmm. So there's this one story of, there was this tent city near an overpass that the authorities had long wanted gone. So one day the police show up with bulldozers, and they're in their riot gear, their helmets and everything. And they order there were just a few women there that day in the tent city, and they said to them, you have 5 minutes to get your possessions, and then we're going to take out your tent city. Whoa, these guys are serious. What are we going to do? Are we going to fight? I don't think so. All we've got are some rocks to throw, and that's not going to do anything against this show of force. Are we going to flee? No, we're tired. We're not going to get pushed around anymore. So can you guess what they did?
Lay down in a circle.
Oh, that would have been a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's interesting, yeah.
I think that would have worked to maybe they guys could have physically picked them up and removed them. But what they did was they slowly started to remove their clothing until they stood stark naked in front of the police and the bulldozers. And the men got so freaked out, they all jumped into their vehicles and left the scene and left them alone.
Wow.
And that tent city was never taken down. So what a beautiful, powerful response. We are here, we're human, and you're talking to people here, you're not talking to objects. So get out of Dodge.
Well, that reminds me of something that happened in a high school where there was a bully coming after another boy, and a whole huge crowd ensued, and I yelled to him, lift up your shirt. And when he lifted up his shirt, and everybody goes, oh, they go like that, that totally took the bully off guard, and he left him alone. And it was fine, he left.
Right.
But I thought to go out of the ordinary, or to do something to break that cycle.
Yeah, because it's a definite pattern of intimidation and fear, and if you do something out of the ordinary, then the bully doesn't expect that, and they have to think and that throws them off.
And it did, yeah.
Yeah.
And they got him, and he was fine. The other one was fine, yeah.
right?
Hmm.
Yeah, one time I was in a workshop course, and the workshop leader is intentionally insulting people, and this guy is good. He can read patterns, and he can read people, and he knows where all your buttons are. So he would like, and just say something to intentionally try to hook each person. And everybody was like, either like just kind of shrinking, the flea thing, or they would try to fight back with some witty comeback. But he was so quick and so good, he could always, like she'd block that and come back with something else, and they were just done. So finally he comes to Pat McCauley. And Pat is this kind of large woman, and she's very kinesthetic and just in her body, and she doesn't have like the sharp wit or anything, so she can't use that. And so he comes at her, and he comes after her with some comment, and she just looks up and she goes, "Are you trying to insult me?" And then it was Jerry, the teacher's turn, to be stopped dead in his tracks, because she asked the question with genuine curiosity. She was really curious. Are you trying to insult me? And so it was like sending the tennis ball back to his side of the court. He wasn't expecting that, and it threw him off, and it stopped him, and he was speechless. And I've never before or since seen that happen in the course, but it happened then. So that's another way, like if you're personally in a bullying situation, you can just be genuinely curious and ask a question. So the energy goes back over there, because they've just put it like in your face. So if you can figure out a question to put it back over to them, that works too, on like a personal level. So I saw another great example of this on Facebook. I do get consumed by Facebook, but sometimes the results are worth it, because I find little gold nuggets. And here's one. I have this friend from high school days. For the last 45 years, he's been a student of Heidi Ochai. So who here has heard of Heidi Ochai? One person? Have you studied with him?
No, I took Japanese karate with in Fort Dickinson.
Oh, okay. Who was the teacher there?
Can't remember his
Frank?
name. Yeah,
Frank Kushner.
Okay.
Yeah, so there are different teachers around, but Heidi Ochai, nobody else has heard of Heidi
He's
Ochai?
like,
Oh, yeah.
Heard of him.
Oh, you heard of him, okay.
Heidi
Who is he?
Ochai's pretty famous.
So,
Yeah,
teacher.
he's like a local cultural treasure. So
Yes, he is.
you know he's Irish, right? Ochai, Ochai. Well, on St. Patrick's Day, aren't we all Irish? He's not really Irish, he's Japanese. And he's like he's literally only 5 feet 2 inches tall, but he's a master of karate. So John Perricone was his teacher. I'm sorry, his student for the last 45 years. And John started when he was 15 and became a health teacher at Maine Endwell High School for, 30 years. He's now retired, and now he travels all over this country and even around the world to his former students, who invite him to come and deliver inspirational speeches, because that's one of the things he loves to do, based on everything he's learned from his study of karate with Heidi Ochai. So he gets this message on Facebook from a guy named Steve, who says, I heard you speak at my school, and I was really impressed. I instantly friended you on Facebook, where I then watched as you would post interviews you make with total strangers that you meet in airports and the places you go to give talks, and they're very inspirational. Then I saw the hate you spewed toward Trump, and I was shocked. I don't like the guy either, but for somebody I looked up to after hearing him speak, I was pretty disappointed. But now you post this pro-vaccination propaganda. You are spreading fear-mongering to a large following, and I am unfriending you. So, kind of a slap in the face, right?
Yeah,
Publicly on the Facebook.
yeah.
So it could be so tempting to like delete it, ignore it, play it down, or to kind of fight back. You don't have your facts straight. But no, that isn't what John did. I really loved the response he made, which was, Steve, I'm sorry if I disappointed you. But as an educator and a human being, I'm not in the business of pleasing others. I discussed a lot of unpleasant topics with my students when I was a teacher. Things like alcoholism, sexual assault, suicide. Have I called out Donald Trump and some former school administrators of mine over the years when I was in high school for what I believed was unconscionable behavior? Yes, absolutely. I don't believe, however, that constitutes spewing hatred. If you can point me in the direction of my specific posts where you feel that I did this, I would really appreciate it. But if fighting the good fight constitutes hatred, I'm surely in big trouble in your book. Please be assured that I have no disposable friends. I'm comfortable with someone friending or unfriending me, but that doesn't make their humanity any more or less valuable to me. Regarding your reference to the Center for Disease Control and Vaccines, I can only offer you what they have to say on their own site, and then he gives the URL for that. Then he concludes by saying, if you'd ever like to talk in real time, or if you'd allow me to treat you to breakfast, just know that the door will always be open. So he beautifully disagreed, I should say respectfully disagreed with the accusations of his accuser. And then he held the door open to reconciliation. So what a breath of fresh air in this highly polarized political climate we've become as a country, where there's so much name calling and fighting or unfriending. He did neither. He went right down the middle and held to his dignity, respected the dignity of the other person, and invited ongoing friendship. So it circles right back to what Jesus stood for. Jesus did not advocate either passivity or submission, nor did he advocate violence. Instead, what he stood for was this openness that respects the dignity of all, respects the right of others to have perspectives differing from my own, and then to interface or communicate, talk with the other person in a way that allows everybody to be included and the creativity of everybody to stay in place so that something bigger can come out of the disagreement. So everybody, gives something, everybody gets something in the process. Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any comments?
I wanted to say that today, being that it's St. Patrick's Day, I was going to work with the children today, and the topic was escaping the comfort zone, because so many people want to stay safe in their beliefs and stay where they are. And St. Patrick, because of what happened to him, that he was actually trafficked to another country, and he turned the other cheek and literally went back and became a bishop in Ireland, the very place that he was taken and taken from his family, says a lot about that. So escaping the comfort zone, I think, is important for all of us to every once in a while see a different perspective and try out something new. Enter the
Yeah.
other cheek, because like St. Patrick's, he did the same thing, and it could have been easy.
Right. Jared?
Well, I was thinking, my understanding of A Course in Miracles, along the lines of turning the other cheek, would be looking in another direction. You know, you have your cheek this way, you just turn the other way, you're looking in a different direction. And they suggest, rather than looking at it as an act of an attack, look at it as a cry for love.
Mm-hmm.
And then realize, you know, the inclusion, you talked about the inclusion, that we're all one. This person's just crying for love, so you respond with an act of love, and it diffuses the situation as well. Instead of seeing yourself as attacked, because, you know, as a eternal soul, you really can't be attacked. Maybe your ego could be attacked,
Right.
but you cannot be attacked. Your real true self is, you know, invulnerable.
Right.
So if you recognize, okay, I'm invulnerable just because I'm into the ego, you include the other person in to the inclusion, that's the true act of forgiveness.
Right. Yeah.
But,
Yeah,
you know,
okay.
what you said is exactly right as well. It's,
Mm-hmm.
main point is to get to the inclusion
Yeah.
and not separate yourself from the guy you feel like
And
you have to defend.
and the inclusion accounts for and recognizes, acknowledges that there can be differences
Oh, yeah.
within the whole. It's not like we all have to agree, and we don't have to like everybody. We are called to love one another, to have that inclusion and respect for differences. Yeah. Yeah, I had a pretty amazing shift just in the last week. I was at a professional development class related to BOCES where I work. And so the presenter says, well, there on your green sheet in front of you, you've got 4 quadrants, and the first one is gratitude. So who are you thankful for in your life? And to my surprise, the first thing that pops up for me is my mother. So I wrote Shirley Gridley in there. And this is very curious because there was always like a pro and a con with my mother, good and bad. And what I've been playing with is what if I focused on a positive emotion such as appreciation for everything, no matter if my mind labels it good or bad. I appreciate just being alive and having experiences, no matter what I call them. So I applied that in my mother's direction too, and then the next thing I'm finding myself thankful for everything that my mother had or didn't have, did or didn't do. And so it was kind of this experience in a gut level of opening up to include all the experiences, bless them, and to realize that they all contain seeds of potential, and they can all be transformed and pointed towards something positive. So that was very revolutionary on a personal level for myself, and I think it kind of relates to this thing too, this, dealing with external relationships. Vera?
Thank you for what you presented to show alternatives, because I basically took it literally.
Uh-huh.
So it's nice to know there's symbolic alternatives to it. Because
Right.
I felt, if I'm being attacked on one side, I would offer the other side. Or that's what Jesus was saying, and just receive any further blows.
Right.
And just be receptive to it and submissive to it. So it was nice to hear what you had to say.
Yeah, it's not limited to or even about submission, right? I've also studied a little bit of martial arts, and my favorite one is Aikido, which is Japanese. And Aikido literally translates as the way of harmonizing energy. What I love, karate is like very linear and yang, and Aikido is all about spirals and circles. And it literally is a way of, like, if somebody grabs your wrist, first thing you do is turn and stand shoulder to shoulder with that person. And then you can just move in a circle and they're still trying to hang on to your wrist, and then you can bring them down if you want to. But it's a way to neutralize the attack without injuring anybody. It harmonizes the energy. And so all of these stories are illustrations of how energy can be Tai Chi'd or just martial arted and turned and then harmlessly dissipated into a harmonious whole. So that's what I see Jesus going after when he says, turn the other cheek.
Can you spell the name of that teacher you mentioned before, the Japanese guy? Because I haven't heard of him.
Oh,
Heidi.
Heidi. Yeah, Hidy.
Hidy.
Y.
Why?
Ochai is O apostrophe CHIAI.
Is it Aikido or Aikito?
Aikido, yeah.
Aikido.
Do means way, I means love, ki is the life force. So it's a way of harmonizing the life force.
Aikido. Does he teach that?
I don't think so. He teaches Washinru Karate, which is a different form.
How do you spell washaru?
WASHIN, and then the second word is RYU.
Who teaches Aikido?
Yeah, there is a guy that teaches it out of the old Johnson City High School. Jeff Gons does teach Aikido locally.
Does he work at AutoZone too?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. I've never been to his class. His wife works at BOCES. That's how I know about him.
In the karate class I went to, we were taught never to start trouble, but if people attack us, then we were to protect ourselves.
Right. Yeah.
We're not to go around and,
Don't be
I
the-
know karate, and start fighting with people.
Right. That's not the true spirit of it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're not supposed to do that.
Right. Yeah.
Thank you, Rick.
Thank you,
Welcome.
Rick.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's time to bless our love offerings. Everybody's really living on unity time. You can't blame it on daylight savings time. That was last week. That there is just one presence and one power, and it's good. You know, we don't acknowledge the power of evil. We recognize there is evil in this reality, but it has no power. That the only power is what we give to evil. That's why the Master teaches to resist temptation, not to fight it, but to resist it, to resist evil. So let's try that again. There is but one presence and one power
in the universe,
and
in my life,
God, the good, omnipotent. And Bruce has a song for us.
Yes.
A happy song. What's that?
If you're feeling down and out, and your head is filled with doubt, chill out, stay cool, relax, let go. Get on board and float downstream, close your eyes and pick a dream, chill out, stay cool, relax, let go. Live each day and have a blast, live it like it was your last, chill out, stay cool, relax, let go. Please yourself and raise a smile. You gotta let go to go the extra mile. Chill out, stay cool, relax, let go. It goes a mile if you ain't gotta go. Sit right back and let the good times flow. Chill out, stay cool, relax, let go. So if you you're feeling down and out, and your head is filled with doubt, chill out, stay cool, relax, let go. Chill out, stay cool, relax, let go. Chill out, stay cool, relax, let go. Chill out, stay cool, relax, let go.
All right. The announcement is covered this dinner. Everybody is welcome to come downstairs after the service and join in fellowship, food and fun, and all those good things that the covered this dinner. And looking at the back of the bulletin, next week our speaker will be Jamie Walters. And on the 31st I'll be speaking. I believe you have a workshop coming up? Or was that fast?
That went past, yeah.
That went fast. Okay. Do you have a workshop? Or any announcement?
Announcement, yeah, I want to say that 3 o'clock at the mosque on 161 Grand Avenue, Johnson City, there'll be a service for all the people that were killed in New Zealand from 3 to 4. So
Okay.
I'd like to go to it, yeah.
Okay. And top of the day today, oh, 2-year anniversary with a wonderful woman named Donna.
Yeah.
We've been dating, so I'm happy about that.
Oh,
I've
very
been blessed in 2 years. And she's still putting up with my nonsense, so hey, there is but one power and one presence.
That's right.
Yeah, doesn't it? Any other special unity moments? If not, it's time for the blessings of our prayer request. Say that with me. God's
All-encompassing love
is doing His perfect work in and through us. Wholeness is established in every area of our lives. And so it is. And Peggy, you have the daily word?
I imagine new and positive possibilities for my life. Hebrew scriptures share this reminder: keep your heart without vigilance, for from it flow the springs of life. When I imagine the unlimited possibilities available to me, I also consider the words Jesus shared: whoever does not doubt in his heart, but believes that what he says will come to pass, it will be done for him. Imagination in my consciousness triggers ideas, but it's through the loving energy of my heart that what I imagine becomes part of my life experience. Imagination continually opens doors of new possibilities, transforming today's vision into tomorrow's adventure. My heart-centered belief in my oneness with the divine power of creation ensures that my life will grow and expand in beautiful ways. Keep your heart without vigilance, for from it flow the springs of life.
Thank you.
To a higher energy. So that's why I like to create new songs. It puts me in that magical space where I can create just like the higher power created everything around us. So it's a good way to align by creating anything, whether it's music or some other creative project. I encourage you all to do it. Just enjoy the process. Don't worry about how it comes out at the end. It's about the process, right?